Good evening. It is very late now. Thank you so much for sticking with it and for still coming to my talk at 6 o'clock. We should all be eating. Just for that, like, beautiful, positive response, I'm going to give you one of these. Thank you. I'm Sam. So I'm a PhD candidate at the University at Albany, and I specialize in rhetoric and composition, like the teaching of freshman composition specifically. And I'm just going to share with you both the TTRPG or world building pedagogy that I'm developing right now, and how I utilize it in teaching my course. So for fun, I'm going to start with a little bit of background about me. If I can I just click? This isn't even presenting. Like, it's not even in like presenting mode. It's just like the edited slides. Oh, no, this one is like this. It's fine. I just need to be able to click sideways. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just hit this.
Okay. Except it's not going backwards now. And the mouse is gone. Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. Okay, here we go. Great. Thank you. I could probably take this all the way back to second grade, but for the sake of time, I'll go back to 2016. I was living in London and I started volunteering for an organization called the Ministry of Stories. Can I just click? There we go. Okay. So this is the front of the Ministry of Stories. It's also known as Hoxton Street Monster Supplies. If you go to London, you should go there. So it's a cousin of 826, which is an American writing and tutoring organization that began in a space in San Francisco. And the space was zoned for retail, but they wanted to use it to open this writing center. So to get around that, they created a fake storefront, which in San Francisco is Pirates, to like sell pirate themed things while having their writing center in the back. So there are various ones all over the US. I think there's 10 of them right now. And they each have their own theme. But Hoxton Street Monster Supplies is pretending to be a real store and nothing else. This is what it looks like on the inside, or it did when I worked there a million years ago, because I'm older than I look. And this is set up in the style of like a 1940s general store. There's a wooden radio and also an invisible cat. So there's like a sound of like a cat purring every so often. So when kids come in, they're like, a cat? And then the person's like, it's an invisible cat. Can you find it? Don't let it out. And there's a shopkeeper in like an apron. There's a lot of warm wood. And these are all products that human beings can purchase. Like the vibe is that it is a store by monsters for monsters, but they have now opened it to humanity so that you can experience what the monsters experience, right? So this includes things like fakest human snot. Does anybody want to guess what this is? Lemon curd. This is lemon curd. They have organ jam, which is raspberry. They have cubed earwax, which are caramels. They have acid pops, which are green apple lollipops. And when children come to the Ministry of Stories on a class trip, they come in through the front door and they spend time browsing the shop. They ask the shopkeeper questions. The shopkeeper has all these great answers prepared. Actually, the proprietor of all of these stores, and there are many, is Igor, the assistant of Frankenstein. Like in Frankenstein lore, these are Igor's shops. It's very deep. And so then the children are told it's a secret door. It'll open with a password. They say it 3 times. A door swings open in the side and they go into the writing center. They all sit in front of this large projector, and the person running the center leads them through this wonderful storytelling exercise. So what's a story composed of? They go through character, plot, setting, everything they need, and they start creating a story together. But then halfway through, the character of the chief interrupts. So this is an approximation of the chief's office that I did with AI. The glass door is actually frosted, so you can't see inside, which is part of the point. You might also ask, how does a chief's office fit in with this monster motif? And when they first created this, they had like a V for Victory wartime theme, which they quickly learned children don't respond to. So they changed it to monsters, but they kept the chief's office, it's very strange. And I think there's some V for Victory posters like in the back somewhere that people have drawn monsters on. And so the chief is this cruel sort of taskmaster that communicates with their employees via a high-tech device that is a baby monitor. And the chief tells the person in charge that they need 28 new stories by the end of the day or they're fired. And the number is always however many children are in the writing center. And so the person leading it says, oh, the children can help by writing the stories. And the chief says, children, we can't do anything. And you'll be amazed how motivating that is for second graders. So I was sometimes the chief. And while I can do different types of voices, I could do gruff. Like normally the chief's voice is like, I hate children or something. But I went with what I thought was my strength, which is my ability to imitate Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil in 101 Dalmatians. And I will do it for you now because you're also nice and you're here. And so the way that I would do it is basically take the paper from Anita and give it to me. Is that different? And I would do it through the baby monitor. So the children then run off all fired up to write these stories, even those who aren't normally interested in writing because they're so immersed and it's so wonderful. And they create these beautiful stories that are strange and intricate and personal. And then we actually spend the time they're doing it printing up these custom books for them to take home with their name on it that says like they're an author and they're a published author and it's wonderful. And I always thought to myself, I was here for like 2 years, like, why does this stop here? They stopped doing the field trips with like 4th grade. And once you get to a certain point, once writing has to meet certain criteria and there are arbitrary parameters that nobody agrees on, it's taught in this dry, bloodless, and often punishing curriculum. So this is something that percolated in the back of my brain for a long time. So for an example of such a curriculum, this is a textbook that is used by pretty much every other doctoral student teaching freshman comp at my university, called They Say, I Say, and it is Mad Libs. This is how they're taught. This is how they're taught to write. It's one big template that stamps conformity and uniformity over all of the students' work, and they're graded on how close they can copy this by just inserting things. And like they rave about this textbook in my like department. They're like, oh my God, use They Say, I Say. Oh, isn't it so good? And I'm like, you want to read that? I'm being mean right now, but it's my talk. So I know why composition has ended up being this way. Part of my degree to know the history, but that doesn't mean that it's the best way to teach it. And also nobody agrees on the best way to teach it anyway. So fast forward about 3 years, I'm doing another master's. Oh, I was in London doing a master's in children's literature. So I'm doing another master's assignment teaching in the US, and I take a course about teaching freshman composition. I had never taken it as a student. I'd never experienced it. And all of the readings we're doing are about how awful it is, about how the professors hate teaching it and the students hate taking it, and everyone's mad at each other. And they keep like, there's these little band-aids they slap on it, like, oh, like digital text will save us. And like now it's like, oh, AI will save us somehow, which is a train I don't want to get on. And so they just agree overall it's better to have the course than not to have it. And they are correct because it has been proven scientifically the only things that improve writing are practice and feedback. Knowing that, why is this the template when it could be so different? So for our final unit in this program that I'm in this class about teaching freshman composition, we had to create a unit to teach one of the standard EDNA papers. EDNA papers are expository, descriptive, narrative, and argumentative. Raise your hand if you were ever taught in school to teach this, to do the same. Yeah. So it's pretty common. And like I learned, I think at one point in high school to write this way. And just so you know, EDNA is from Alexander Bain's English Composition and Rhetoric, a manual, and it was published in, drum roll please. This is how yeah. And later on, when I adjuncted, which I will skip over a little bit, they gave me textbooks to use that use this to teach. So yeah, super good. So I chose to do the argument unit, and I created a TTRPG called Sycorax Rising, in which students are cast as representatives from various planets, attending an intergalactic council session, who have to decide what to do with a newly discovered planet. They had character sheets and objectives and committees. I'd never played a TTRPG before at this point, by the way. I was just like, this sounds like a good idea. And I did no research at all. And I made this up, and they were supposed to convince other representatives to do what was in their best interest. And I was like, this would be so cool and fun if it was real and I could do this. And then I just moved on. So I started adjuncting to a couple of schools, and it occurred to me that A, this is what I wanted to do with my life, and B, I can fix it. And I can create my own way of teaching writing and build it from the ground up. And I just needed the time and resources and credibility to do it. So I applied to a PhD program. That's where I'm at now. I am doing my dissertation on this, on using TTRPGs to teach writing, or what I call world building pedagogy. So strap in. Definitely not going to cover everything because we can't. And if you have questions later about things that I did not talk about, please just ask me. So I believe that we need an approach to the teaching of writing that provides, in the words of Professor Ira Shore, something more than job training and socialization into subordinate lives, a utopian challenge to inequality and to authoritarian methods. So I propose to accomplish the creation of such sites of utopian possibility through what I call world building pedagogy. I'm doing this with my two hands. It's okay. So this is my only academic slide. Bear with me. So I believe students need to understand the structure of the world they experience by breaking down and critiquing its components, which I call decomposition, craft writings of resilience and positive change and hope, which I call composition, and ultimately understand how writing can create alternative spaces and ways of being in the world, which I term recomposition, in opposition to the dominant ideological narratives that they currently experience. Okay, now the academic part is over. So the course itself, I've taught 2 sections of this course so far, one in the fall of 2024 and one in the spring of 2025. The 2 sections are similar in theme, but different in the actual game itself and the requirements and assignments. So I'm going to share pieces of these courses with you, but it's just pieces. So if you're like, oh, why didn't you, like, do you not have any readings? Yes, we have readings in the class. I do not have time to talk about them. So the premise for my first course, and I owe much to Avery Alder's Dream Askew for this. So it says, we are outcasts and survivors, figuring out what comes after the end of the world. Capitalism has driven us towards extinction, extinguishing cultures and causing biospheric changes that make most of Earth unlivable. Corporations have built high-tech biomes for people to survive in the harsh conditions caused by climate change, but they come with control over nearly every aspect of life. We are a group of rebels who refuse to live under corporate control. We live outside the biomes and the margins of society, banding together in makeshift spaces like abandoned malls, skyscrapers, shantytowns, and hospitals. We must work to strike out at the corporate overlords and to create a sense of safety and community. This requires students to form a community, to get to know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and to put collaboration before competition. I do divide my students into groups of 4 or 5 as well to kind of create their own miniature enclaves. So students are randomly assigned characters, and I have character sheets. These are just like little pieces of them. Oh, it's really big. I didn't need to make it bigger. I don't need to read them all, but the gesture is, you've always been too much. You learned early on how to make fun of yourself before anyone else gets a chance. It's now more important than ever to have a funny bone, to make the world so bright that no one can see the darkness in your heart. My sister was like, don't share that one. It's too dark. But here it is, and it's on there. And oh, that's the bigger one, which is the archivist. Which is also good. I don't have to read it. But anyway, the character sheets have a lot of things on them. They have things that they can circle for students who've never played a game like this before. So they can circle their skills and their appearance, and they can write anything that they want. They have flaws and weaknesses, things like that. And then they each have 3 objectives that they can choose from for gameplay that range from personal to pro-social to kind of social justice. They also had to roll for their character relationships. This is one of my favorite things. And just a little example. I'm in the classroom and it's like the first day we're doing this, and I overhear 2 very straight cis boys who are sitting next to each other, and they're rolling for their relationships. And Steven turns to Connor and he says, dude, I'm in love with you. And Connor goes, but dude, you bullied me in high school. And Steven goes, yeah, I bullied you because I'm in love with you. And they did a little like, and that was their relationship over the course of the game. And it was wonderful. And they were great with it. I think that they secretly were like, oh my God, I get to show affection to another man. Yeah, they were great. So kind of a just overarching playbook. So we had a session 0. So they have to come up with a fictional touchstone for their world, how their characters met, goals and obstacles, lines and veils, all of the important stuff. Then we go over the basics of collaborative improvisational storytelling together, like the principle of yes and, familiar from improv, right? If you say, I'm the lead singer of the band, and somebody can't say, no, I'm actually the lead singer of the band, right? That doesn't work. You build off of each other's ideas and you keep going. Each round of play was a session of about 45 minutes. It was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. So each Monday specifically was devoted to this game. Wednesdays were for writing exercises and Fridays for discussion and activities concerning the course readings, which were a mixture of speculative fiction and scientific pieces. Each session, they would start with one player drawing an event card for the table. So these are examples of some of the event cards that I created. So for instance, Megacorp, which is the big corporation, issues new laws restricting travel. A friend receives encoded messages that seem to be coming from inside Megacorp. People being suffering from a strange ailment, and you know it's foul play. So this is like the event card that they start with, and then they have to respond to it through dice rolls. So after the event card is drawn, they take turns rolling this 4-sided die. These are the 4 possible rolls. I will reiterate, the first time I did this was very straightforward. I didn't know if this was going to work well. I didn't want to overly complicate it. And if you can tell, narrate, persuade, analyze, and interrogate have similarities to Edna. Because if I was questioned by anybody, I really wanted to be able to like relate it back in a really straightforward way. And they'd be like, how is this teaching composition? And I'd be like, analyze. So how this worked is they would roll it. And so narrate and analyze are solo player options. So one player gets to do the whole thing. Persuade and interrogate are multiplayer, which is the entire group. They don't just get to pick one other person to play with. And this is how they built the story world out together. This worked immediately in the classroom with like no effort on my part. Students were like, awesome. They got into storytelling, and it was great. They actually took to it so well that in the second half of the semester, I required them to add to the game to keep it fresh because they kind of mastered it and they wanted more complicated things to do. So I had them come up with more dice rolls of their own to the point where we had like 10 of them. And they came up with things like create your own NPC and like play the NPC for a round, or create and discover an item and talk about what it has to do with it. And it really gave them ownership of their experience. Some students also manipulated different pieces in the game to customize it. So for instance, there's an X card, which is pretty standard in TTRPGs. It means like, stop, I don't want to do the scene anymore, move on, no questions. And they used it to deflect bullets. Like there would like be a shooting scene and they'd pass it around to each other and like, I was like, yeah, do whatever you want to do. And then the next part, at the end of the play, there was a writing task, and each person took their own writing task randomly, and they would have to do their writing task for the week. And they were both explorations of writing in different genres and for different audiences and ways of building out the game world. So these are examples of writing tasks. Describe what you can buy at the underground market. You scrounge together enough for a hollow tattoo, like hologram tattoo. What do you get? What's its significance? Fairy tales persist because human beings are still afraid of the same things: the dark, our parents, marriage, children, the unknown. Rewrite a fairy tale you know for the current era. Big fairy tale buff, that was for me. Then another thing I had was write a BuzzFeed quiz, because it was important to me to kind of merge this new reality that they were creating with media that they interact with. And so one of my students made this BuzzFeed quiz. This is not the whole thing, but this is some of it. And I took it twice. I took it once when she gave it to me, and once right before I did this presentation. I got the same thing both times. To no one's surprise, I'm feline pie. The secret weapon. All throughout life, your computer has been your lover. The other point is your hacking abilities. And even though you're very skilled with computers, your human interaction skills could use some work. She sees right through me. I'm not good with computers, but the rest of this is true. So the first major assignment that students had was an identity assignment. This is kind of cut off, but it says roleplay offers an ability to explore identity that's just not possible in the real world. Your identity in the game is different and separable from your real world self, yet it is intimately connected to it. Your perception of yourself is reflected in your character, whether you project characteristics you don't think you have in your real self or over accentuate aspects of your actual personality. And then you choose from one of the following prompts. So write a nonfiction piece about the intersection of your identity with your characters, a fictional piece about something that happened or may happen to your character. And then for my students who really like the traditional and are struggling with being outside of it, explore the concept of identity in one or more of the texts of this unit. I had like 2 students always choose like the regular option, and most of them end up with like a middle of the road. So in terms of like responses that I got to this, just as examples. So I had one student, just one, choose to be a character of another gender in the game. His character was a female human adopted by mermaids who felt ostracized by her adopted community. And he wrote about the way his character's journey paralleled the way he felt when he realized he was queer. He wrote about his own feelings of grappling with his queerness through his character's internalized self-loathing at only being able to breathe air and not water. Another student wrote about the joy of creating the strong Black female character she'd always wanted to see growing up in the media, and how healing it was to be able to embody that character on a regular basis. Oh, my students' final projects. So this is just very quick. So they had to create artifacts from their world for the final project to be able to share the world with the rest of the class, because they each had kind of their own groups. So this is just an example of a zine that one of the groups made, which is super cool. And if you like go in and read it, it's all like very well written and everything too. It's very neat. I also have a lot of physical objects they made, and I wanted to bring them, but they're in my car, and I did not want to bring them inside. But one of them is a like magical bomb diffuser called the Orb, and it lights up. Yeah, I was very impressed. So here are 2 quotes from students because I like to get student feedback. So it says, through the game, we were able to make connections of collaboration and humanity with one another. We saw the humanity in each other, and we're able to see a side of each other no one else in the universe saw of us. I find that to be really interesting and profound. And then through this course, I learned to put my own experiences into words. I was honestly taken aback when I started writing my thoughts and emotions down, as I've always been taught to suppress my feelings, and that being a man means enduring a life of hardship and showing no weakness to the world as you endure it. Through the community we've built as a class, it both allowed me to once again tap into the creativity of my early childhood and embrace the pent-up emotions inside of me. Yeah, I know who both. We do not have a ton of time left, and I was going to talk about the second iteration of my class. If it... Nope. Okay. Okay. So in the second iteration, it was the same premise, except we work for Megacore, the like giant evil entity. So we work for them during the day, and then at night we actively rebel. Oh, this is a fun picture. So while the majority of my courses are writing courses, most of my students are freshmen, and there's a latent component to my curriculum that involves creating joy and connection between them. And I encourage this through exercises geared toward connection, empathy, and laughter. And that is important. So these cards are different. There's 3 rounds of gameplay, and there are these 3 cards: mystery, solve, and the message card. This should, if I do this. Okay, so the mystery, the first one was an email appears on your office computer, a video. It is blurry and creepy, full of distorted images, and there seems to be some sort of creature lurking in shadow. At the end of the video, you're told that you'll die in 4 days. Yeah, and this is actually related to a reading that we did about creepypastas and how creepypastas are the new folklore, and they like are about human fears in a new era. And I based this off of that. Then we have the solve questions. So they have to decide what is stalking them, who's responsible for it, why it was created, and how they stop it. And then, oh, nope, I went the wrong way. And then the message card is always a cipher. Their playbook for the game has various ciphers in them, and they have to figure out which one they have to use to decode it. And then the decoded message is always basically a hint towards what they can come up with. And then there are mini games that also give them more hints through the gameplay. And This is a mini game that I created based on this called Tech Tales, in which students have to combine old folklore creatures with modern technology to create kind of a new bogeyman. So if you draw a Minotaur card and a drone card, you have to decide how to combine both of those traits into a new monster. Students create their own trading cards. They battle it out. The dominant monster is the answer to the solved question, what is stalking you? So they're putting together the story while they're solving a mystery at the same time. It takes like inquiry, but it's open-ended. The point of this exercise being what is considered a threat changes with time, but humanity's fears remain the same. There are 3 rounds of play. The work round, so these are their dice rolls for this. They could come up with their own for each one. Round 1, they're just working at the office and gathering evidence. Round 3, they're actively rebelling. Round 2 is in the middle, and they created all of the dice rolls on their own based on an exercise I gave them about joy. And it's for them to have moments of connection and intimacy with each other. Kind of, you know, it's important in the fight for survival to take time to just be you and to be human. So the last round is the solve round, which is where a lot of the writing comes in. So at the end of the rounds, the groups come to a consensus about their mysteries, and they have to write down the answers to each of the questions, and they have to give me a chain of evidence proving that it's correct. So if they say, oh, like this person is the one who's behind all of the bad stuff that's happening, they have to say, I know this because this is something that happened in the game. So they are basically creating an argumentative essay based on the gameplay that they did. And I have different methods that they have to use to solve, and these are all actually really important analytical techniques in academia, like appearance, reality, ubiquity, which is patterns, historical context, things like that. So I have an example of an assignment for this semester as well. And this is choosing an aspect of American culture or a trend from the present and extrapolating a future from it and taking it to the extreme. For instance, AI has now become prominent in many aspects of life. What might that mean 200 years from now? COVID has meant many things such as education move online for good and bad. What happens if that trend continues? Other options include the climate crisis, the continued appearance of low-rise genes, the widening gap between the uber rich and those barely making ends meet, plant-based beef, etc. Can it be positive? I challenge you. Other examples. Because the focus of the course is sort of the way things have gone south in this corporatized, tech-heavy future dictated by the 1%, and how we're on track to end up there, and to ask students, based on your gameplay, how do we change this? And so this kind of, these assignments give them ways to think through their worlds and to expand them. So I'll give you just one example of this, which is a student wrote a first-person account of a young woman on a futuristic reality show called Vixens, in which young Black women living together in a house were given a drug that significantly heightened their emotions and reactions to such an extreme that someone is killed each episode for the purpose of entertainment. The piece pointed out the way the media promotes damaging stereotypes of Black women as aggressive and hypersexual, and how in this way, young Black women who are trying to make something of themselves are exploited more so than they're empowered. It was a great paper. Additionally, their final in this course is to design a mystery of their own using what they've learned over the course of the semester, and another group of students has to play through that mystery. The feedback in this course, interestingly enough, was more about the writing itself. This course definitely enhanced my understanding of what writing can be. It didn't just confirm what I already knew, but it helped build upon it. And for the first time, allowing me to think freely. I used to think writing was always going to be tied to rigid structure, repetition, and dry analysis. This course proved writing can be expressive, creative, and even enjoyable, even when it's academic. And while I feel other academic experiences in WCI classes can be easily replicated and dominated by AI writing and uninspired work, the writing we produced in this class was incredibly unique to ourselves and not like anything we could have ever predicted or considered. It felt spontaneous in a very good way, like a breath of fresh air after the stuffy conventions of other English professors. This course enhanced my understanding of why we write and what we should strive to get out of it, and also reminded me to break the rules when I'm trying to create something that matters to me. This was an English student that started as an English major and said to me at the beginning of the class, I can't continue being an English major. It's made me too nihilistic. And then at the end of the semester was like, nah, I'm gonna keep going. So anyway, last slide. So I will be changing the course again for the fall. The first semester of this was too simple and the second was too complex. It was a good game, but they just took too long to get through it with all the different components, and I think it destabilized the flow of storytelling. I also think the mystery component, while fun and still inventive, took away some of their agency in creating their stories. The first time around was much more dynamic and active, and the second time was more cerebral. And so I'm going to try and go for a middle ground. Second, these courses focused on a dystopian world, and I want to see what happens when I make it a utopian focus instead. Hence this photo from the pirate-themed TV show, Our Flag Means Death. I'm going to explain and explore the concept of creating utopia using pirates who embody a freedom and a sense of play and community that we all yearn for. Partially because they exist outside of capitalist wage labor, and partially because pirates are a type of found family and a community which is democratic and often queer. So that will be my starting point. That is it. Thank you so much. I don't think we have time for questions because it's 6:35 and everybody wants to leave. But if you do have questions, find me later.
Yeah.